Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am Zesty and today I'm going to show you guys how I made these super cute air dry clay projects. I know that during these times there is a lot of us out there, me included, that are in a lockdown right now, and there are times when maybe you're bored, maybe you feel like you are frustrated because you don't know what else to do other than watch Netflix, eat dinner, go to work or work from home. So I decided to get this air dry clay because I think that making and molding something with your hands is an amazing form of creativity. It's really good for your mental health. It's soothing and relaxing, and it's super satisfying when you get to see the end result. Even if you feel like you're not that creative, it's always fun to get your hands and mold something and make something. You will be surprised with how much you love it. If you guys end up liking this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. All right, without further ado, let's get into these air dry clay projects. I'm using this Crayola air dry clay that I purchased on Amazon. It is non-toxic and super inexpensive, so I will definitely link down below. I'm going to start by showing you how I made this precious butterfly ring holder. The first thing I'm doing here is softening the clay with my hands and then rolling it out until it's a nice even layer. I'm doing this by applying even pressure throughout and turning the clay constantly. As you can see, this is quite thin. I went for about 4 to 5 millimeters in thickness. I also drew out a butterfly shape, and I'm using a dull pencil to trace it over the clay, but you can definitely use one of those poker needles if you have one. I didn't, so the pencil does just fine for me. Now that I have my shape of the butterfly, I'm using a thin blade to carefully cut it out. And I'm using the back of this paintbrush to imprint some more detail onto the butterfly. And I'm also smoothing out the edges with some water and my finger just to make this look nice and seamless. And you can use a variety of different tools to make little imprints and designs on your projects. I ended up just using the back of the paintbrush, and I used this butterfly box as my inspiration for the design. Now that I'm done, I'm using this piece of cardstock to help lift the butterfly without damaging it, and I'm placing it in this small little bowl that's covered with some plastic wrap. And this is going to shape the ring holder and keep it safe while it dries. All right, moving on to my favorite and most functional piece that I created, the incense holder. I'm starting off with rolling my clay to 5 to 6 millimeters in thickness, and I'm using this cookie jar to imprint an even circle. Now I'm carefully cutting out the circle with my blade, and if you're wondering why my hand keeps going back and forth here, I was dipping the blade in water thinking that it might make the cutting smoother, but I'm not actually sure if that really helped or not. I'm using some water and my finger to smooth out the edges before carefully placing and molding it in this little bowl. And for the actual holder part, I am rolling out a piece of clay with my hands until it's nice and round. And then I'm using an incense stick to create the hole. And as you can see, I am jiggling it around just a little bit so that it has a little bit of extra room, but not too much. All right, now I'm using some water on the bottom of the ball, flattening it out a little bit, and then gently pressing it into the center of the catcher. And you do want to make sure that it is really attached here. While I leave that to dry, I'm going to move on to my next project, the tile trinket or catch-all dish. So for this dish, I am starting out the same way as before, except I'm using slightly more clay and making it a little bit thicker. And I'm going to be using this textured wallpaper to imprint a design onto the clay. So I'm doing this by rolling it over with even pressure on all sides. And I'm using this bowl to give my dish its shape that I will now cut with my blade. And this wallpaper I've actually had for quite some time. I purchased it at Walmart about 3 or 4 years ago, and I just constantly use it for arts and crafts. And as you already saw with the previous projects, I am again smoothing out the edges with my finger and some water. This time I'm using the back of a bowl to shape my dish, and the pattern side is facing down on it. And I'll be smoothing the bottom out with a wet sponge. And just a side note, if you don't know this already, air dry clay is not food safe. So all of the projects I am making today will be for decor and or different functionalities that do not involve food. Up next are my moon inspired projects. I'm making a moon trinket dish using the same techniques that I used in the previous projects. For the moon, I imprinted the shape from a moon that I had drawn out, and then I used my blade to cut it out. Before removing the excess, I am using these fabric flowers that I am imprinting onto my moon. And you can use fabric, stencils, buttons, all sorts of things to imprint designs onto your projects, which is really, really fun. I'm letting all of my pieces dry for a minimum of 2 days before sanding or painting them, just to make sure that they're fully dry and ready. So this is what they look like after 2 days of drying. And now I'm going to be sanding the edges down and any rough parts so that they are smooth and ready for painting. I'm using both sandpaper and my mouse sander. If you do have a mouse sander, I definitely recommend using it with fine grit sandpaper, and just be very careful and gentle with it so that you don't break or damage your pieces, because it is obviously a little bit more aggressive than just sanding it with your own hands. Unfortunately, I did end up accidentally breaking a piece off of my butterfly ring holder, but I wanted to show you guys that you can most likely salvage a broken piece, so no worries here. I just used some Gorilla super glue to attach it back together after I was done sanding it. For the incense holder, I wanted the edges to be facing a little bit more upwards, so I ended up using the mouse sander for that effect. And I also decided to flatten the top of the holder, and the mouse sander made it really easy to do that. After all of my pieces were sanded, I gave them all a wipe with a damp paper towel to get rid of any dust from sanding. I decided to give my moon inspired pieces all the same color scheme, so I ended up mixing some blue, green, and black acrylic paint to create a sort of dark ocean blue color. So I was able to lightly brush the paint on the moon, which looked so amazing and so simple. And then I just painted the edges with some gold paint to really elevate it. I also decided to add some gold dots using the paint splatter technique, which is really just flicking paint mixed with a little bit of water from your finger with a brush. So for this moon inspired trinket dish, I did want to add a little bit of extra gold. So I decided to place the round piece of cardstock that I had used to trace the inner circle on top of the design and just flick some gold paint around the rim so that it would add a little bit more to the design. Okay, disclaimer, this tile-inspired trinket dish definitely took me the longest to paint. I thought that I could use the same brushing technique as I did with the moon, so I decided to paint the pressed-in design with gold, thinking that I would be able to brush the blue paint over it, but it did not work out that way at all. I thought it would, which is totally fine, but I did end up having to go over the design by spot painting with blue paint and gold paint until my plate looked like this. So it was a lot of painting over the lines and going over it, being very careful and very slow. Although it took long, it was really therapeutic and I didn't actually mind it at all. It was really fun. And of course, I painted the edges with gold to tie everything together. For the butterfly piece, I decided to use the splatter technique with less water or sometimes no water so that I could create some lines. If you want something similar, but you just want the dots and you don't want the aggressive lines, you will need to mix the paint with just a little bit of water, and that's going to thin out the paint. And that way when you flick it on, it's going to flick on as little dots instead. I ended up using the same splatter technique on my incense holder, but I wanted more pronounced looking dots, so I made sure to use water with the paint when flicking it on. And as you can see, I painted the flat part of the ball gold as well as the rim. Once my pieces were all dry, I coated them with acrylic matte varnish, which really helps protect the paint on your pieces and also makes them wipeable if they do get dirty. So this is the finished look of all of my pieces. I am so thrilled and happy with how these came out. I had such a blast making these and they came out so nice. You guys have to give this a try. This was actually my very first time using any air dry clay and everything turned out so amazing. I'm so happy with the results and I really hope that this has inspired you to try something new, perhaps make something with your hands and just feel the joy that comes with that. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. If you've enjoyed it, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this, if you want to see more air dried clay videos, more DIYs, definitely comment down below and let me know. I really hope that you're all having an incredible day and I hope to see you all very soon. Bye.